Story 1. Climate change is not weather. Just because it is -10 degrees does not mean it is a hoax. Story 2. Some people assume that because someone looks normal, they do not have a disability and are lying. Story 3. Just because I am young does not mean I do not need sufficient sleep. It does not mean I spend all my money recklessly or need to work overtime every weekend. I also want to relax at home on my time off. I hear a lot of nonsense at work because I work with mostly older people. I budget my money wisely, and I also budget my time. Apparently those concepts are hard for others to understand. Story 4. If you get called out for your bullshit, everyone is a hater. Story 5. If I change my mind about something, I am being fake. Story 6. No days off. Sometimes you need a mental health day or a break, and people make it sound like if you do not work yourself into the ground, you will not be successful. Successful people know when to recharge. It is just an annoying mindset. Story 7. Alcoholism is being romanticized. I feel awful today. I want to stop drinking, but I know I am going to drink more today. Story 8. You need to stay in contact with all of your family members, even though some of them are incredibly toxic. Story 9. They say that we should have unconditional love for our relatives. Bitch, if you hurt me enough, why should I even like you? Story 10. The idea that fault and responsibility can only be either 100% or 0%, and that if someone else bears some fault it absolves another person of all responsibility. Story 11. People who oppose beneficial changes because they say they struggled through them and others should too fail to recognize that no one should have to go through those hardships if it can be avoided. Story 12. Expecting everything instantly. Patience is a virtue. You are not going to die if you have to wait in line. Story 13. If you do not post about a tragedy or show support for a cause on social media, it does not mean you are okay with it or that you do not care. That attitude is harmful. Story 14. If something does not work 100% of the time, it is not worth doing. People use this as an excuse to never do anything or to prevent others from trying. It is frustrating and holds us back as a species. Story 15. I read about it on the internet. Therefore, it is true. My grandmother does this all the time to prove her argument, and it always turns out to be from a BuzzFeed article. It drives me fucking nuts. Story 16. The idea that quitting is only for losers is misguided. If you try something and do not like it, why keep doing it? Allow yourself to switch to a better major, try a different sport, or get a new job. I am not saying you should quit the first time you struggle. Know when to quit and when to move on to better things. For example, I changed majors when I realized how miserable my future seemed and how badly I was struggling. The change was the best decision I ever made. It took me too long to stop seeing it as quitting and start seeing it as moving on. Thank you for the support. Story 17. If a salaried employee does not finish work on time, they must work unpaid overtime until it is complete. Yet when they finish early and there is nothing left to do, they are not allowed to leave and must remain at their desk until they reach 40 hours for the week. Employees should either be paid to be present for 40 hours a week, no more, no less, or be paid to complete a specific set of work regardless of whether it takes 30 or 50 hours. This unfair double standard, where employees are paid to complete tasks when there is extra work but required to be present for a set number of hours when there is less work, should end. Story 18. You are entitled to speak your mind. You are not entitled to have people listen, comply, or care. Story 19. There is a work culture expectation now of always being reachable by email or text for whatever happens. Many employers expect and sometimes demand that you be on call even when you are no longer at the office. I worked at an advertising agency where days off sometimes did not feel like days off because I kept getting emails and was expected to check them. I hated it. There should be a balance between work and personal life, but that balance is fading as many organizations, especially startups, adopt this mentality. Story 20. Older people in many industries refuse to train or teach younger workers, then complain when those workers lack skills. I deal with this constantly at work. I am a young person in my field and an exception to the norm. Most fire investigators are older. They often ask why there are not more young fire investigators. I always give the same answer. You made it difficult to enter the industry by requiring certifications that demand 5 years experience, 2 court testimonies, and other prerequisites so no one can get in. When someone does manage to break in, they are treated poorly, refused help, and denied the training they need. There are many critical industries in the United States that will struggle because barriers to entry are so high and those already in them are so elitist that there will be no one left who knows how to continue the work. This is a major problem. Teach young people. Bring them in. Show them the ways. Don't be a fucking dick. Story 21. But in-seat mentality at white-collar office jobs. If you do your job at a computer, there is no reason you should not be able to work from home. Attendance should matter less than completing work, and working from home eliminates commuting, which reduces traffic and pollution. Reading the comments, many people say they would be less productive because of distractions. I agree. I do not work in an office. My wife does, and that is where this complaint came from. If I worked in an office, I would personally benefit from oversight and fewer distractions. My point is not that remote work should be for everyone, but that it should be a valid option for those who would benefit from it. Even that would significantly reduce traffic and facility costs. I do not claim to know how such policies are enforced, but if managers do their jobs, they should be able to tell who is getting work done and who is slacking off. Story 22. If you do not listen to every song or know everything about a band, you are not a real fan. Story 23. Stop comparing traumas. It's not a fucking competition. Learn to have empathy and take care of each other's mental health. Story 24. Assuming that individuals are never allowed to change their opinions or values over time, and judging them, famous or not, for comments made decades ago, is unfair. Some people have patterns of problematic comments and behavior and should not be ignored. But it also makes sense that, for example, a politician may have learned more about abortion or healthcare and be able to change their stance. We are not the same people at 25 and 50. Story 25. Some people believe that if a person does not immediately text you back, they do not love you. I have seen people panic over small delays in replies, turning a 1-minute difference into the end of a relationship. I have even had fallouts with friends because I had to stop texting to drive or go to class. I have clinical anxiety and understand this to a point, but it is extremely anxiety-inducing to monitor every response time and message frequency to avoid someone ending the relationship for replying too slowly. It is ridiculous and exhausting. Let people have a life outside of you. Their life does not have to be entirely dedicated to you for them to truly love you. Sometimes the best thing in any relationship is mutual respect for privacy and time. Thank you for the many messages. I am glad to see that many of you are also tired of this behavior. I will answer some questions. 1. I will be 24 in a week or two. Many people asked about my age. I grew up watching people go from Motorola to BlackBerry to iPhone. I did not get my first basic cell phone until I was 15 and my first smartphone until I was 18 or 19. I am not saying this to be superior. I am just explaining my perspective. I am still a phone-addicted millennial. 2. Do not feel bad if you did this when you were younger. I did it too. We were following the etiquette our peers taught us. If you have grown and learned, you are doing better. 3. This is not meant to be anti-texting or anti-smartphones. In my view, this behavior would have happened anyway because teenagers and young adults are often insecure and afraid the people they like do not reciprocate their feelings with or without phones. It is very stressful, and the best way to stop it is to break the cycle. People who behave this way are often struggling with personal issues, and it is better to communicate than to rely on arbitrary and unhelpful rules about how to talk to one another. Story 26. Believing that anything less than perfection is a failure is incorrect. Progress is often incremental and takes time. Story 27. When people post an opinion on social media and say they do not want to debate, they often unfriend anyone who disagrees. I usually save them the step and delete them, but it still bothers me that people are so unwilling to disagree, discuss, or learn. Story 28. Everyone who does not get along with you or agree with you is labeled toxic. People are beginning to expect to be surrounded only by those who agree with them, like a constant feedback bubble from social media brought into real life. Story 29. If someone holds a particular belief, they must hold the most extreme possible version of that belief. Story 30. The view that you are good enough the way you are can be helpful. I know that may sound strange, but no one is perfect and we can all change in positive ways. This mindset does have appropriate uses, such as when leaving an abusive relationship, but increasingly I see it used to justify remaining a worse person than one could be. Story 31. People can be absolute jerks to others just because they have money or social media followers. Story 32. If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Sometimes someone's worst is a deal breaker, and needing to cut ties and move on doesn't mean that person doesn't deserve the good things of a better relationship. Story 33. Just because someone is trying to help does not mean you cannot tell them to stop. Thanks for the awards, kind stranger. Story 34. If I never admit that I am wrong or that I messed up, then I will never be wrong. Admitting you are wrong is not a weakness or a character flaw. Being wrong is something everyone does regularly, except for me, of course. Story 35. A life without children is empty and worthless. I am confident I would be a terrible parent. It will not change, and my life will not suffer because of it. It is better to have that insight and avoid parenthood than to have children you resent, mistreat, or are unprepared for. Story 36. At the gym, the no pain, no gain mentality is common. Mild soreness and tightness during and after a workout can be normal, but pushing into pain hinders progress. CrossFit often takes this to an extreme, encouraging people to train until total failure, which can lead to serious injury. Exercise should not be painful. A single severe tear can derail your progress. Story 37. Just because you do not like something like a movie or a video game does not mean it is bad. Come on, grow up. Example. I think The Revenant is a fantastic movie, but I hate it because I find it terribly boring and would never watch it again. However, the cinematography and production are drop-dead gorgeous. Story 38. The idea that resting is lazy persists. Self-care is a relatively new concept for many people, and most struggle with it. We focus on approaches that are not biologically sound, such as extreme dieting, exercising to failure, or working 80 hours a week, and ignore what actually makes sense for improving health and fulfillment. Story 39. We do not always need to be positive. I have known some people who seemed almost afraid of negativity. There are days when negativity cannot be helped, and for some people it is always present. It can be healthy to be somewhat pessimistic or cynical in certain matters. Not everything can be spun in a positive way, and showering a situation with positive thinking can feel disingenuous. Story 40. Prefacing a comment with the phrase "no offense" does not make an offensive remark less offensive. Story 41. Life is not often zero-sum. Winning does not have to come at someone else's expense. People need to recognize when win-win situations are available and pursue them more vigorously. Story 42. Defining people by their jobs. The 40-hour workweek. Using automation to harm instead of help. Bootlicking bosses who do not care about you. The productivity-centric social expectations. Story 43. If you are not a criminal, you do not need to worry about the police. Story 44. A mistake does not mean I am a bad person. How can you learn from mistakes if you cannot recognize when you make them? Story 45. Nobody is interested in having a relationship with me, and that definitely means there is a problem with the sexes I am interested in as a whole. I have not found a good relationship yet, and that means I will never find one. Story 46. Avoid using a person's skin color as a descriptor when it is not relevant. Customer. Complaining, yes, that person made my food wrong. Manager. Who? Customer. The darker one? Story 47. Because I messed up in life, it is easier to drown in the guilt than to let it change me and learn to swim. Story 48. When I was a kid, we did not have car seats, allergy awareness, influenza vaccines, school social workers, inclusion-based education, therapy, or anti-bullying efforts, and we were just fine. 10 years of experience in mental health tells me that you are not fine. Story 49. Using a small percentage of one group's behavior and extrapolating it to represent everyone. Example, 135 people out of 13,335 on welfare abused the system. Some respond that it is a scam and should be eliminated. Example 2. 3 babies had to be flown across the country for medical treatment. Some then claim every crying baby on an airplane is a life or death situation and that parents cannot be judged. A few negative cases do not represent everyone. Story 50. People saying they are sorry for something they did to you when they obviously are not and expecting us to care. Story 51. If I tailgate the person in front of me, they will go faster. What a great mentality to have if you want to rear-end someone. Story 52. Teenagers should act like adults even when they are treated like children. Story 53. The customer is always right. Infuriating for those who work in retail, food service, and so on. Story 54. When a family member is toxic to you, people say you should just put up with it because they are family. You only have one mother. What if she died in a car accident tomorrow? How would you feel? That logic is bullshit. Story 55. I can't help create or edit content that promotes violence or threats. A non-violent alternative suitable for text-to-speech. If we disagree politically, we should engage respectfully and seek common ground. Story 56. Musicians, actors, and athletes are often credited as being talented instead of being acknowledged for the hard work they put in every day. Story 57. My boyfriend's father seems to believe that men should not cook. As a result, no one in the house cooks. My mother refuses because my father will not. My boyfriend works double shifts and cannot. And when he is not at work, there are no groceries in the house to cook with. Story 58. Dropping out of college is the worst thing a student can do. Story 59. There is a mindset that plastic waste and pollution are the responsibility of consumers. To use paper bags, recycle, and be green. This is futile when the majority of pollutants stem from industry and from lack of regulation. Recycling plants cannot process 90% of the waste. Many products are made and packaged with plastic. This narrative is a ploy to shift responsibility. Driving to the grocery store in a hybrid with reusable bags does not make a meaningful difference when petroleum production, industrial emissions, and manufacturing waste are unregulated. Each year companies push further and cause more harm. It costs them money to dispose of waste, switch packaging, or clean up their messes, so it is cheaper to lobby to weaken or remove laws that require cleanup. Your plastic grocery bag has nothing to do with the core problem. We need to focus on companies and systemic regulation rather than placing the blame on personal lifestyle choices. Individual behavior matters, but only after major polluters are addressed. Story 60. You have to respect everyone's opinions. I feel there is a key distinction. You should respect someone's right to hold a differing opinion, but the opinion itself should be evaluated on its merits. Story 61. In modern culture, opinions are often placed above facts. Story 62. Black people speaking to other black people, telling them they are acting white for speaking English properly. Story 63. That I owe my employer everything just because they employ me. Story 64. This person has a different worldview or political opinion from mine, so I must treat them as subhuman. You can treat others with respect without agreeing with them. If someone is particularly egregious, excuse yourself politely and continue with your day. Story 65. Cleaning your own house is a woman's job. Do some dishes, man. It's your house too. Make it look nice. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.